Welcome, everyone, to this program titled Cuba Confronting COVID and the U.S. Blockade. Good evening. Well, in Rochester, where I'm talking from, it's cloudy and it's windy and it's cool, but it's not snowing. So it's a good evening in Rochester, and welcome, everyone. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Vic Vinke. I'm a member of Rochester Committee on Latin America. And with your help, I will be the moderator for tonight's event. I'd like to start by thanking our sponsors. A big thank you for Interreligious Foundation for Community Action Organization, IFCO Pastors for Peace, Albany Cuba Solidarity, Ithaca Friends of Cuba, Western New York Peace Center, the Latin American Solidarity Committee of that group, and Rochester Committee on Latin America, otherwise known as ROCLA, which is my home. I ask you all now, if you've not already done it, please click the mute microphone on the lower left of your screen, and remember to unmute yourself at the same location when you wish to speak. I'm asking you to please save your questions or comments until the end of the program. However, as the program progresses, let us know by writing in the chat area at the bottom of your screen, your question or comment, and later on you're welcome to raise your hand and let us know that you want to speak. Our primary speakers tonight will be Gail Walker and Dr. Samara Adri, and I'd like to let you know a little bit about them. Gail Walker worked for IFCO Pastors for Peace from 1987 to 2002 as Director of Communications, and co-led the 1988 IFCO delegation to Nicaragua. It was that delegation that resulted in the formation of Pastors for Peace. After working as a journalist and communications professional in print, video, and radio, Gail returned to IFCO as a director in 2011. And since then, just to add a personal note, Gail has developed new ways for IFCO to promote its original goals, while at the same time meeting the challenges of the changing politics and now COVID. I'd also like to tell you about Dr. Samara Adri, who will be speaking after Gail. Samara was born and raised in Ghana before migrating to the United States with her family at the age of 9. She's a 2020 graduate of the Latin American School of Medicine, otherwise known as ELAM, E-L-A-M, in Cuba. And she's currently working at IFCO Pastors for Peace as the school scholarship program coordinator, while completing her necessary requirements to apply for medical residency in the United States. Her fields of interest include rural community medicine, preventive medicine, and cultural psychiatry. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Gail Walker.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see you. And Vic, thank you so much. You did a great job. Vic's a really good moderator. Felt very impressed. But thanks. And it's really great looking across the screen and seeing a lot of familiar faces I haven't seen in a while. And we're all probably, some of us a little grayer, and some of us a little, the COVID 10 or 15 or 20. But but it's good to see everybody. And just thanks for being here. Thanks to Vic, thanks to the various groups that have sponsored tonight's event. We're excited to finally be out here talking about the caravan, but we're excited that we've got our friends from Albany and Buffalo and Ithaca and elsewhere in the region to join us. We know you could be somewhere else. We know that there are so many options for video Zoom calls these days. So we're grateful that you chose to be here with us. As you all know, COVID has turned everything upside down. And while we weren't able to organize a caravan last year, for that reason and more, we feel it's really important, critically important to organize a caravan this year. And so we're excited to be able to begin organizing these kinds of caravan events to talk about what our plans are and why it's important to continue to do this work. We wanted to go in July, as many of you know, that's our usual time, but given the limited flights to Cuba and the state of the virus on the island, we know that July is simply too soon. We need more time. And so we hope to go down in the fall and are in discussions with our Cuban counterparts about that. So stay tuned and we'll keep you posted. But more important than ever, we feel it's important to organize our French shipment caravan to go this year. In fact, we believe that Cuba needs our support, especially today, after the onslaught of during the Trump administration and the fact that the Biden administration still hasn't reversed the harsh measures in place that were put in place under the previous president. There's no doubt that Cuba needs her friends now more than ever. We know that many of you, as I look across the screen, many of you are familiar with the long history of US aggression against Cuba. So rather than spending a lot of time reiterating what we think most people know about the more than 6-year blockade that has caused incredible suffering for the Cuban people, as you know, by denying access to food and medicines and trade opportunities, not just with the United States, but with other nations. I want to take a few minutes just to talk about why Cuba is so important today and to focus on some of the critical, crucial updates. On a personal level, my first trip to Cuba was in 1992. And there were so many things that I was touched by. It's hard to limit that list of things. But one of the takeaways included being impressed by the medical system. As you can imagine, anybody who's actually traveled to Cuba, you know, there was somebody on our trip who fell sick, and the care that he received was immediate and thorough from a humble Cuban doctor. And I was really impressed with that care. That was not, it wasn't. It was a humble doctor, not an arrogant doctor that many of us have. Are familiar with. There was also someone, as a community organizer, somebody who had been doing block club organizing, I was impressed by Cuba's CDRs, these committees in defense of the revolution. The way the CDRs were organized at the start of the Cuban Revolution to help organize the needs of the people and to support the efforts of the revolutionaries was really impressive as they were fighting against the US-backed dictator Fulgencio Bautista. So they're not just about, as many of you know, about having block parties, but really caring for one another, keeping an eye out for their neighbors, helping to organize their communities from elections to the distribution of resources and more. So that was an impressive, takeaway. And another thing that I will never forget from that first trip, as a Black woman from the United States, I was pleasantly surprised by to see the police with no guns. No guns. I can't tell you how much that really struck me. Having witnessed police brutality multiple times firsthand, that simply blew me away. So these may seem like small things, but they were impressed. They really, like, blueprints, little crumbs, little nuggets of reasons why I was so attracted to Cuba. As a kid growing up, a long time ago, I'd heard that Cuba didn't have elections. Right. I'm sure I'm not the only one to have heard that. So I was shocked to learn that not only did they hold elections, but they were truly fair and balanced, the way the candidates shared information about who they were with the community and with the voters, the people who would be voting them, would trust them. It wasn't a situation where the person with the most money could buy the most TV time and therefore have the most exposure. There was no such thing as that. They were, they held real, true community forums where candidates and residents would talk and exchange information and ideas and answer questions. So that informed voters would actually make decisions to determine the best fit, what best fit the needs of their community. I could go on, but I won't. I will say this. I was talking to Vic just before a couple days ago, and some of my colleagues. I've been having a problem with my shoulder. I think it's either an irritated rotator cuff. I'm hoping it's not cut. I bring it up because I've been on the phone the last 3 days dealing with doctors and trying to get some relief from what's been going on. And I was referred to somebody who said, "Well, we can't give you an MRI, but we'll give you what was it that they wanted to do? Ultrasound." And it was actually Emily Thomas, his daughter, who is the head of the physical therapy at a hospital, who said that makes no sense. Like, why are they going to give you an ultrasound? That's not going to tell us what's wrong with you. And we were commiserating about how a Cuban doctor wouldn't do that. It just, the fact that I'm lucky that I've got health insurance so that I could sort of navigate this madness, but I'm on the phone with the insurance company, with the doctor, with the entity that's between the insurance company and the doctor that's going to decide whether I can get this MRI. And it's just the time and energy that gets expended to do these kind of things, unheard of in Cuba. These are the things that I think of when I think about, why is it that we support Cuba? Why is it that we lift her up and that we appreciate what Cuba has to offer? I know that that's not a unique story, and I know many people have, got stories like that, or experienced situations far worse than that. We've all lost friends. We've lost friends in Cuba as a result of this crazy, idiotic policy. And that's the other reason that we also continue to do this work. But those are just some of the, the powerful impressions about Cuba. And frankly, what keeps me going back and continuing to support this tiny nation that has stood in support of it, not only its people, but all people who've struggled like David against a Goliath in one way or another. The incredible resistance and resilience of the Cuban people, despite the US government's 60+ year brutal blockade, is amazing. And you've all seen it in one way or another, or heard about it. But that's why it's important that we continue to do this work. I keep returning, and I know that you do too, and keep supporting these efforts because of the beautiful way Cuba embraces the world, including folk from the US, the very nation that has imposed the cruel sanctions against the Cuban people. making a distinction between the people of the US and the punishing government of the US. And we admire and appreciate how Cuba has served as a model and truly shown what it means to be a global partner. Tiny Cuba, with its limited resources, has sent tens of thousands of doctors through its Henry Reed Brigade to dozens of countries to help fight COVID and Ebola before that, and to support countries after hurricanes and earthquakes and other natural disasters have gripped them and their people before that. It's part of their DNA, it's part of their history, and it's part of why we love and admire and respect Cuba. Cuba's commitment to medical internationalism is unmatched anywhere else in the world. Through campaigns like the Saving Lives campaign, through the work that IFCO's been doing with also the U.S.-Cuba Normalization Committee, and the numerous members of the Cuba Solidarity Campaign, we've all, been impressed and worked to expose the tremendous efforts about Cuba's efforts in medical internationalism, and to educate people about Cuba and what it's done for the people of the world. And despite the blockade, Cuba has done tremendous work to create vaccines for its people, and it's going to share those vaccines with others in the region. I mean, that's the model. That's why we lift her up and we support what she represents. In Cuba's fight against COVID, the downside is that there are over 1,000 cases a day since late March. And sadly, more people are dying now. Today, nearly 700 deaths. But on the flip side, on the positive side, the recovery rate is much, it has increased, has improved. Dr. Adri, I'm sure, could speak to some of these things. But there are more than 6,000 active cases now, but still the numbers in Cuba, given all that she's been up against, are remarkable and far better than the close to 600,000 deaths here in the United States and the over 412,000 deaths in Brazil, just as some examples. So this is, one of the ways that Cuba has served as an example in its fight against COVID at home and abroad, and shown that this is why the world needs to embrace this tiny, small nation. And yes, Cuba needs us, but I dare say that the world needs Cuba, and that's why we continue to stand in solidarity with Cuba and to push back against the blockade, and why we continue to travel to Cuba to see for ourselves and to counter the massive misinformation campaign about Cuba. That's why we have organized our caravan year after year and have pledged to do so until the blockade is lifted. So I'll just end by saying, personally, simply put, I want to do what I can to prevent kids from growing up as I did, believing that Cuba doesn't hold free elections, that it doesn't care for its people. And I know that I can count on you to join us in continuing to take action and continuing to educate, because that's what the caravans are. They are an action education program. To continue to do that, to help people see the real Cuba and do what we can do to crush the US blockade of Cuba. So I just wanted to talk about this work in a slightly different way. What personally motivates me, and I think what motivates many of us to continue to embrace our Cuban friends and family. In order to sort of contextualize some of what is really happening currently in Cuba, we want to now share a brief video segment from a recent show of Democracy Now! That helps to, I think, outline some of what's really going on the ground at the current moment. So Emily, let's see if we can do this. Some of you may have seen this video segment, but we thought it was worth sharing again.
We begin today's show looking at how Cuba has successfully fought the pandemic. Since last year, only about 440 Cubans have died from COVID-19, giving the island one of the lowest death rates per capita in the world. Cuba's also developing 5 COVID-19 vaccines, including 2 which have entered stage 3 trials. Eduardo Martinez is the president of BioCuba Pharma.
We are very confident that our vaccines will be effective, the vaccines that are being developed. The results that we have had to date point to satisfactory results, and we maintain that before the end of 2021, our population will be immunized with the vaccines that we're developing. Given the blockade that we are subjected to and the situation in the country, it would have been very difficult for us to get the results that we are getting in the fight against the pandemic if we had not developed this industry more than 35 years ago in our country.
For decades, Cuba has heavily invested in its medical and pharmaceutical system, in part because of the 6-decade-old U.S. embargo that's made it harder for Cuba to import equipment and raw materials from other countries. In the 1980s, Cuba developed the world's first meningitis B vaccine. It's also developed important cancer drugs that are now being used in the United States and elsewhere. In a moment, we'll go to Havana. But first, I want to turn to an excerpt from the recent online documentary series, The War on Cuba, produced by Belly of the Beast, an independent media group in Cuba. One episode looks at Cuba's efforts to fight COVID-19 at home and abroad. It's narrated by the Cuban journalist Liz Oliva Hernandez.
Every morning, tens of thousands of doctors, nurses, and medical students take to the streets across Cuba. They are on the front lines of our fight against COVID. Talia Ruiz is a first-year medical student.
I don't feel afraid. If we are careful and take the necessary measures, we won't get infected. There are doctors who have faced the disease head-on, and they haven't gotten sick. For example, my dad. Hi, Dad.
Talia's father, Juan Jesus, is a family doctor who works at a small clinic next to their home. In March, he joined a group of Cuban doctors on a medical mission to Lombardy, Italy. At the time, Lombardy was the global epicenter of the pandemic.
The number of cases overwhelmed the health system there. We helped the medical personnel who could no longer handle so many cases, and we saved some lives. As we walked to the farewell ceremony, from every home, people came out and applauded us. It was the best feeling I've had in my life. That's why you go on missions.
It wasn't the first time Juan Jesus risked his life far from home. He's part of the Henry Reeve Brigade, Cuba's medical special forces.
Henry Reeve was a soldier from the United States who fought for Cuba against the Spanish in the 1868 war. The brigade was formed in 2005. A hurricane called Katrina destroyed New Orleans. There was a huge number of deaths. Cuba offered to send 100 doctors to work alongside U.S. doctors. We were ready to go.
George W. Bush rejected Cuba's offer to help New Orleans. Since then, Juan Jesus has treated survivors of natural disasters and epidemics around the world.
That's an excerpt from the video series, The War on Cuba, which was produced by Belly of the Beast, an independent media organization in Cuba founded by journalist Reed Lindsay, who talk about overall during the time of COVID, even beyond the vaccines, what Cuba has done, what you document in your film series, like sending doctors to places like Brazil, Bolivia, Ecuador, and beyond.
You know, thanks a lot, Amy. I was in Haiti for 5 years, and that was my first direct experience with the Cuban doctors, and I found it remarkable what the Cuban program in Haiti was doing. It wasn't only bringing Cuban doctors to work in the poorest areas of Haiti, it was also training Haitian doctors in Cuba. And Cuba at that time was graduating more doctors than the public universities in Haiti. and they were returning to Haiti and working there. And in a sense, it was brain drain in reverse. And living here in Cuba, my doctor is just a block or two away. If I have any problem, I walk down there. It's free. I don't have to show any papers. And that's what it's like for healthcare. It can be a little shocking not having to go in and fill out forms and showing your insurance and everything. And of course, when COVID hit, I knew that Cuba would be prepared, and I felt safer here, frankly, a lot safer than I did if I had been in the United States. I remember telling my mom, who's often been worried about different places I've been in around the world, I told her now I was more worried about her than she was about me.
I want to turn to another excerpt from your film, The War on Cuba, about Brazil's far-right President Jair Bolsonaro expelling thousands of Cuban doctors in 2018.
Bolsonaro has always followed the U.S. president. They call him the Latino Trump. The U.S. wants to cut off the income to choke the Cuban economy, to try to bring about a political change here on the island. When Cuba left the program, around 1,700 municipalities were suddenly left without doctors. I had a patient in Brazil, a 70-year-old man, illiterate. He made an appointment so he could say goodbye. He cried right here on my shoulder.
Millions of Brazilians in poor communities were left without health care. It was just the beginning. Ecuador's president became a Trump ally, and then, in November 2019, he expelled hundreds of Cuban doctors. That same month, a U.S.-supported coup ousted Bolivian President Evo Morales. Bolivia's de facto government immediately took aim at the Cuban doctors.
The false Cuban doctors.
They said we weren't doctors. They accused us of being criminals.
Joandra Muro was head of the Cuban medical mission in Bolivia.
They threatened to burn down the Cuban doctors' homes. They took others to Interpol. They pointed guns at 2 brigade members. They strip-searched some of our women.
That an excerpt from The War on Cuba. Reed Lindsay, a founder of the Belly of the Beast production that made this series. Now, this is very interesting what's happening in Brazil. And if you can talk about the effects of this. I mean, we just reported that 4,200 people died in Brazil just yesterday. That's over 10 times the number of Cubans who've died during the entire pandemic.
Yeah, and in doing this the series, we spoke with numerous doctors who were part of Cuban doctors who were in Brazil, and they were hurting because they knew that these communities that they were helping, they weren't able to help, and that they were suffering. People were dying of COVID. What that was part of Trump's policies to crush the Cuban economy, because Cuba sends doctors to other parts of the world. Like Haiti, there are many cases where there's really no evidence it's anything but altruistic, but it also sends doctors to places like Brazil, and Cuba receives some money for that, and they use that money to subsidize healthcare in Cuba, and so the Trump administration went after these programs to try to basically hurt the Cuban economy, and it wasn't the only thing they've done. What's really remarkable about the vaccines and what Cuba's achieved in the last year is that Cuba right now is undergoing a severe economic crisis. And in part, it's because of COVID. Obviously, there's no more tourism, and Cuba depended greatly on tourism for its economy. But even before then, there were people who were comparing the economic situation in Cuba to the special period after the fall of the Soviet Union, which was considered worse than the Great Depression. And the reason was because of U.S. sanctions. Now, the embargo's been around for decades, but under Trump, those sanctions became far, far worse. And, that's really the story we were trying to tell with the war in Cuba. And I feel it's important to point out that this is a project. What's really unique about Belly of the Beast, and I'm very proud of being a part of it, is that it is a collaboration between U.S. journalists and filmmakers and Cuban journalists and filmmakers. Most of the people in Belly of the Beast are young Cuban journalists and filmmakers. They're telling stories about U.S. intervention in Cuba for a young audience in the United States. And we feel that's really important because people in the United States are at the forefront of pushing for change and policy in the U.S., but they don't always get information about the impact of U.S. policy in other parts of the world, such as Cuba. Not only how that policy is affecting Cubans, but also how that policy affects people in the U.S. And you cited an example earlier. Cuba produces life-saving drugs that cannot be obtained in the United States because of the U.S. embargo.
Let me go back to Dr. Orlando Perez Rodriguez. What plans does Cuba have for your vaccines, like Soberano? How do you plan to use it? And as with doctors, do you plan to export this vaccine? And how many people have participated in trials in Cuba?
Okay, we are expecting to get the result of the phase 3 clinical trial by June. So if we have already the clinical data for efficacy of this vaccine, we should get an authorization for emergency use for the Cuban regulatory agency, and then we can start the massive immunization program in our country. But in parallel, with this phase 3 clinical trial that involve more than 80,000 people, because Soberana, a candidate vaccine or vaccine candidate, has a clinical trial that should include more than 44,000 people, and the other vaccine candidate vaccine, Abdala, has a clinical trial that should include 48,000 volunteers. So, but in parallel to this clinical phase 3 clinical trial, we are also making clinical studies at population scale in risk groups, population group. For example, the healthcare workers, all people that are facing the disease directly. And then we, in this personal, medical, doctor, nurses, and employees, we are also now making a clinical study. All this data from phase 3 and the clinical data in this a population, a clinical study, that is like a real work, because in that kind of study you will have not only the efficacy, but also how effective will be the vaccine in somehow stop the virus transmission, not just preventing the disease. We should have enough data by June to have this emergency use authorization from the Cuban regulatory agency.
I want to go to the U.S. I want to go to the U.S. administration approach to Cuba. During his campaign, President Biden promised to lift current restrictions on remittances and travel to Cuba, but it remains unclear if he's going to pursue resetting relationships with the island. Last month, White House spokesperson Jen Psaki said a shift in U.S. policy on Cuba is not a priority for Biden, adding his administration is reviewing Trump's designation of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism. This is Biden speaking to a crowd in Broward County, Florida, just days before the 2020 presidential election.
We have to vote for a new Cuba policy as well. This administration approach isn't working. Cuba's no closer to freedom and democracy today than it was 4 years ago. In fact, there are more political prisoners, and secret police are as brutal as ever, and Russia, once again, is a major presence in Havana.
So that was Biden right before the election. Of course, during the Obama-Biden years, they were normalizing relations with Cuba. Reed Brody, we're going to end with you. Reed Lindsay, we're going to end with you. If you can talk about what the effect of these U.S. sanctions has been on Cuba, and what it would mean if those sanctions were lifted.
And as I mentioned, Cuba is going through an unbelievable economic crisis. And the sanctions have been absolutely devastating. And they've taken on every part of the Cuban economy. They blocked oil shipments from Venezuela. There was an energy crisis in Cuba. They blocked remittances. If you wanted to send me some money in Cuba, you wouldn't be able to do so. You no longer can send money via Western Union. They basically stopped all investment. They've called Cuba a state sponsor of terror. They've stopped all U.S. tourism. Even if there wasn't COVID, there'd be no U.S. tourists coming here. Basically, Biden is, although he said that he was going to implement a new Cuban policy, has not shown that he will. And just yesterday, Juan Gonzalez, who's the basically for the National Security Council that runs point on Latin American policy, told CNN, quote, Biden is not Obama in Cuba policy. And he said that that the administration would not invest the political capital necessary to change policy towards Cuba. The Biden administration is being pressured by powerful Cuban Americans. The Cuban Americans are the chairs of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. They're getting a lot of pressure, and they're just not interested in changing policy. At least so far, they've shown them not. So far, it's status quo.
Vic, but
yes, thank you. And now we're going to hear from Dr. Samara Audrey. Give us some insight into the medical training and the conditions that she encountered in Cuba and in the United States.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you, everyone. Good evening to all friends. It's an honor to be here tonight with you all. Great allies of IFCO, Pastors for Peace, and Cuba. For all those who are new to us in the caravan to Cuba, welcome. And we want you to know that love is our license, and we plan on using it, using love to bridge every gap of understanding and doubt regarding what Cuba is and who the Cuban people are. Some of you may know that born out of the devastation caused by Hurricane Mitch and George in 1998, Cuba, in its long-standing practice of medical internationalism, sent a brigade of physicians, nurses, and other healthcare workers to the countries that were affected. Those countries being Guatemala, Honduras, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. The medical brigade quickly realized that the suffering of these nations was not merely due to the recent hurricanes, but rather largely due to the long-lasting effects of poverty and oppression. So out of that disaster was born the greatest gift to humanity, when Comandante Fidel Castro Ruz offered 5,000 scholarships to youth of those impoverished nations to train as medical doctors and return to their communities and to revive their communities. That gift caused ripples throughout the world as many struggling nations appealed for their youth to be extended the same opportunity. The Latin American School of Medicine, also known by its abbreviation in Spanish as ELAM, was that gift. So when United States congressmen and women visited Cuba with IFCO as their tour guide, they witnessed the robust and impressive healthcare system in Cuba and visited ELAM as well. They inquired about youth from underserved and underrepresented communities here in the US also being able to train at ELAM. And Comandante Fidel Castro did not refuse. In fact, he offered 500 scholarships to deserving youth from the US. And starting in 2001, the first cohort of US ELAM students began their medical training, but not without the important role that IFCO played in the process, being entrusted by the Cuban government to be the sole entity to administer the scholarships to youth from the United States by way of a grassroots recruitment and vetting process. This scholarship has to date granted many communities here the honor and privilege of having 196 graduates and 56 current students representing over 35 states. The pathway to be considered for this exceptional opportunity to be trained in humanist and social medicine that is true to the Cuban medical reputation has basic requirements such as being a US citizen with no criminal background, being between the ages of 18 and 25 years old, and having at least a B- average in college level sciences, specifically biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, and physics, all with lab components completed. We encourage all individuals who want to be Cuban trained physicians to apply. ELAM has produced over 25,000 physicians from over 120 countries who all serve in their communities, many of these places gaining their first community physicians thanks to ELAM. As médicos del Ejército de Batas Blancas, our belief that health is a human right is inherent and a value that we are fighting to be recognized globally and locally. You all have witnessed that medicine and public health should not be practiced separately, and that is just one of the advantages of being trained in Cuba. This scholarship gives our communities a fighting chance to choose people over profit. It gives us the agency to stay committed to the health of our people, especially those among the most marginalized and neglected in our society. We want you all to help us spread the word to deserving youth and tell them the truth about Cuba and the true superpower that it is, because it put people over profits in every way that matters. Just as Elam was a beautiful and lasting gift born out of disaster, we hope to replicate that example, especially now during this global crisis, ripping through the fragility of human life. Yes, good things are possible in times of uncertainty and economic instability. Cuba has shown us by example through and through, by weathering the storm and leading others to safety for over 60 years, despite being under a crippling and criminal economic blockade by the United States government. Please tell anyone interested to reach out to us at IFCO Pastors for Peace by accessing our website to request an application, www.ifconews.org. Please feel free to email me at samira@ifconews.org. I would be happy to share my experience and answer any questions to aspiring candidates.
Thank you.
Great.
I believe you have some more for us to hear from you.
I'm sorry, Vic, I didn't quite hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gail. You are going to tell us some more about Cuba and what people can do about Cuba?
Right, absolutely. Thank you. We're going to get Emily to help us bring up a slide. Thank you, Samira. That was, it's, Samira is a recent graduate of Elam, and it's, really a byproduct, I think, of the important work that this project helps to produce. These Cuban trained physicians that are coming back to serve here in the US. So we wanted to just, as we're beginning to wrap things up, talk about, the ways in which everyone can help. There are a variety of different ways that you can do that. Certainly one is to join us this fall to be a part of the 31st Friendshipment Caravan. We're getting ready to, as a matter of fact, Samira and I getting ready to head down to Cuba. We're looking forward to talking with our counterparts about making plans for this caravan. And John Waller has told us he's received numerous signs of interest of people that want to go. So we'd like to make it as big as we can make it. So please think about joining us for this fall's Friendshipment Caravan. Second, as Samira Adri just eloquently said, help us really spread the word about the Elam Scholarship Program, or even, find young people that are interested in applying. You can go to the IFCO website and certainly get more information about that program and the overall work that IFCO's doing around Cuba. Organize for advocacy within your own congressional, with your own congressional members, and reaching out to the Biden administration. We've got a toolbox of materials that we're beginning to pull together, and we want to expand those materials. And we've included, materials that you can use for outreach to the progressive faith community. Emily Thomas can certainly speak eloquently about that, but we're trying to provide materials that people can use to continue to do their work, to do what they can to support Cuba. Participate in and organize your own monthly car caravans in protest of the US blockade of Cuba and in solidarity with Cuban families. Many of you know that the car caravans have been taking place for the last several months in different communities across the United States, but also in various other countries. And it's really been an incredible illustration of support for Cuba. We want you to check out the locations and times of the nationwide caravans on the website of the NNOC, the National Network on Cuba, nnoc.info. It's been a really tremendous project, and we hope that, people will consider joining into caravans that have already been organized or organize their own, and help to really make this a larger effort of support of our Cuban friends and their Cuban families. Support the Saving Lives campaign. I mentioned earlier that Saving Lives has been doing incredible work, but you can help by working to pass a resolution for medical cooperation with Cuba in your city. There are a number in your city, your state, or with your union, whatever entity you work with. There are a lot of different ways that you can do that work. There's also a campaign, Syringes for Cuba. There's an appeal that's in the process of being launched. Learn more about these efforts by going to the Saving Lives website listed here on the screen. So these are just some examples of things that you can do, large or small. The important thing is to get out and do what you can do to be in support of Cuba. So we encourage you to do that. If I'm glad Emily's leaving this on the screen for a moment for those who want to write down any of the website links. And if you need this information after we end tonight's Zoom call, you can always contact us at IFCO, right to the website IFCO at ifconews.org. ifco@ifconews.org, and we'll be happy to share more information and make sure that you have all of these details. And again, I just want to reiterate that Samira Adri, who's our program coordinator, co-program coordinator, a member of the team that's working on the med school program, can be reached at Samira@ifconews.org, which is also there in the chat. So that's that. And I guess I now have the distinct honor of going to the fun part. This is where let's see, where everybody can join in. There's sort of a group effort here. You know what I'm trying. You know where I'm going. You know I'm heading to that fun time of fundraising. Yay! I am the daughter of a Baptist pastor, and I should be able to do this better than I do. But I'm hoping that you'll help me out, not leave me hanging too long. But as you know, a large part of the caravan organizing really involves raising funds. The only way we can continue to do this work is to raise money to get the support of our friends and neighbors across the country and elsewhere to join us in doing this work. And the way that we do that is we need to raise money. We need to do that to help continue to support Cuba. There are a variety of different ways in which that money is used. It's used to help cover the costs of shipping the donated materials that we've been collecting and will continue to collect that we'll be taking down to the island. So that's one way. Another is to help provide scholarships to young people who need to go to Cuba, who want to go to Cuba to see, so that they will be educated and informed about the Cuban reality and can come back and serve as ambassadors themselves. So to participate in the caravan, we want to provide as many opportunities as possible to get young folk involved and connected. And of course, to support the Elam project that we've already described. This is a program that, again, is bringing Cuban-trained doctors back to the United States to work in underserved communities across this country. And it's an important way to really transform healthcare in the United States. So these are just examples of ways of, and I think, Emily, if you've got the screen about the fundraising piece, that if you can put that up, that would be helpful. I'm not sure, she's saying something to me, but she's
I thought it was there. Are you people not seeing it?
No, we're not. We're seeing the what you can do slide. So.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
Yep. All right. Well.
Try now.
Nope. Not yet.
Let me start over.
Okay. Well, while you do that, no worries. We're all family and we work in these. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
You got it.
I thought it was there the whole time you were talking. So
no worries. So Emily's beautiful slide here shows that there are different ways that you can donate to IFCO Pastors for Peace. For those that are text savvy, you can text the word IFCO simply to that phone number on the screen, 646-859-5344, and follow the instructions to pay by credit card. So that's one way. You can go to our website, www.ifconews.org, and you can click the donate button and again, pay by credit card. Emily's done a lot of research about ways to make sure that that's as secure as we can possibly make it. And you can always do it the good old fashioned way by writing a check or sending a money order to us at our P.O. box. Make that check made out to IFCO and mail it to the P.O. box on the screen there. P.O. Box 1368, Orange, New Jersey, 07051-1368. And all donations are tax deductible. I just want to end by saying, you know, the project, this Pastors for Peace project, as we mentioned briefly before, it was born on a beautiful sunny day in Nicaragua along the Rio Escondido. Beautiful, pristine waters in Nicaragua. And it got its start when U.S.-backed Contra forces attacked Nicaraguan civilians. And of course, one of those people on that passenger ferry was my father, the late Reverend Lucius Walker, who was one of the wounded people among those who were shot and wounded. And he used his voice to speak out about the unjust U.S. foreign policy. Aside from calling Ronald Reagan an assassin, he called him an ass too, but an assassin, he used his voice to really speak out about the unjust U.S. foreign policy that resulted in that attack, and that so many other actions that have taken place as a result of the pain and suffering that people across the globe, including our Cuban friends, have been exposed to and forced to endure due to that policy. So it's been a blockade, as we've mentioned, of more than 60 years. And like my father, as U.S. citizens, we all have a special responsibility to keep speaking about our government's unjust policies. And that's why for nearly 30 years, we've continued to do this work, and why we're so grateful for all you can do to help us continue to move forward, to continue to partner with us. I'll just end by saying this, that I've said more than one occasion to the staff, including Emily, I'm always amazed sometimes when we receive these generous gifts from you all. It's very heartwarming, because it's a show of faith and trust that you believe that, you know, we're in this together, and it's what allows us to keep the doors open. Sometimes I'm amazed that here we are a decade after my dad's death, we're continuing to do this work, and it's because of friends, the generosity of people like yourself. So I'll just end with my commitment that every dollar you give will be stretched as far as we can stretch it. And if you're thinking about giving $1, give $2. And if you can, give $5. And if you can, give $10. Whatever it is you can do, it matters, it counts. And we just want you to know that we're deeply appreciative of the trust, and hope that we can continue to partner with you. as we do this work. But whether you text or you donate now, the donate now button on the website, or you send in a check.
Hey, Gail, Wayne Alt has his hand raised.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make a few remarks. I've been to Cuba approximately 8 times, and I was very happy to be able to go to Cuba in 1994 with your father, and we took transformers over to the hospital. We took machinery to the hospital. Many good things for the Cuban people. I'm just wondering, after all your presentations, if all of our cities in New York State might be able to take advantage of this whole program and put it on a video to some of our friends who would be supportive of the program and what you're going to be doing. Advertise the want for caravanistas to go with you, and goods and money and things like that. Is that possible?
Sure, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think that Vicki is on the call, Western New York Peace Center. And I think she had talked about trying to record this so that it can be shared.
Right.
Actually,
yeah,
I am here on the call. I want to say also our new executive director, Deidre ML, is also on the call.
Great.
And so is our producer. We do have a producer of Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center. Richard Wicca is also on the call. So we're going to be taking this recording and putting it on our YouTube channel. So right now it should be on the Facebook Live, but it will also be on the YouTube channel of the Western New York Peace Center. So that'll be an easy way to take the link and share that link.
Thank you.
Maybe not tomorrow, but within the next couple days. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very good. Just a few more comments. You know that Dr. Kelvin Lee is going to be leaving Roswell Hospital here in Buffalo, New York. He was a very much created some good relationships with the Cuban medical people, and I'm just wondering how we can continue that relationship. I think it's so important that we make those bridges with a hospital such as Roswell and the Cuban medical people that is so supportive of what Dr. Lee did. Is there any way of doing that? Can we set up a relationship, and maybe it should be the Buffalo or Western New York responsibility to contact Ms. Johnson, the administrator at Roswell, to try and do that? You got any ideas or anything off the top of your head you could share with us on that?
Yeah, I can tell you this much. I know that the Save Lives Committee has been really engaged in trying to reach out to the folk at Roswell. I'm sure that work is going to continue. I know that there's, I think some of the people unfortunately had to leave because they've got a meeting where they're talking about a Syringes for Cuba campaign that they're trying to get off the ground. But John Waller and Bob Schwartz, who were on earlier, are among those in a part of that committee and are reaching out and trying to continue to stay in communication with the folk over at Roswell. And there's also a doctor blocking, it's terrible, blocking on names. But I know that there are some folks that are really trying to make sure that they maintain a relationship with him. He's is it in Ohio?
Indiana, I think. Dr. Lee is going to Indiana.
Indiana, okay. Yeah, and I know that there are some people within the movement that are trying to, do what they can to stay in touch with him and see how we can make use of his expertise in lifting up Cuba.
Just one more comment, Gail. I'm sorry. How can we, as voters, progressive voters, convince our President Biden how to continue the relationship with Cuba like Obama did? How can we, do you have any, innate feelings or ideas that might be helpful?
Yeah, I think that's really important, Wayne. And I think that the only way we're really going to continue to push this new president to do the right thing is for him to hear from his constituents, to hear from the folk that got him in office. And one way of doing that is certainly reaching out to your elected members of Congress and making it real clear that that's, your perspective. That you want to a different relationship with Cuba, that even, under Obama, there was more that could have been done, but we need to at least get back to that. That needs to, really be pushed to completely reverse what he had said he was going to do, to reverse Trump's policy toward Cuba. So I would say that that's certainly an important piece. Anybody else got ideas?
Can I?
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I speak in on that too, guys?
Emily, I can't. You're a little low.
I add that you can call the White House. There is a White House number, a phone call number. You can call the White House and leave your information, or of course you can write to the White House. And just also to mention, there's a large campaign underway to try to get the United Nations vote, comes up on 23rd of June, to have the United States say in that vote that the blockade is over or unnecessary. The vote takes place, as you probably know, every year when every nation in the General Assembly votes against the blockade, except for Israel and the United States and some obscure Pacific island. And so, again, there is a campaign to try to get the United States to change that vote.
Yeah. Thanks, Mick. Thank you.
Vic, I see you've got Andy Bale, I believe, is raising his hand, and John Locke also has his hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll jump in.
Okay. Well, maybe Andy should start. You have to unmute yourself, Andy.
And then Gail, I'd like to chime in too.
Hi, Gail. I'm Andy Bello, and I'm with the First Presbyterian Church of Englewood, New Jersey. I wanted to ask you, are you going to be posting information about the caravan? I noticed earlier that you have a caravan coming up, but I did look at the website and there's no information yet on it.
Yes.
So maybe that's one thing. The other is, I think another fundraising item that you might want to touch on that's near and dear to my heart is sending youth to Cuba. So perhaps on your website, you could have a little something where if you want to donate to fund scholarships specifically, that would be helpful. Because I think that's an important part of educating those who don't know.
I would agree with you, and absolutely. That's one of the things we do want to do is get young people down to
Presbyterian minister from New Jersey.
And I tell you what, I'm going to put my email in the chat. And if you would reach out to me, I'd love to be in touch with you either via email or by phone. There's several different things I'd love to be able to talk with you about. So thank you.
Gail, Andy Bello at Gmail.
That's easy. Okay, great. Great. Okay, I'll definitely reach out to you. Thank you. And then, I don't know, Vic, did you see, there's John Locke.
Hi, folks. First of all, I want to tell you how moved I am by your demonstration. Of course, the dogs start barking as soon as I unmute myself. There, hope that's better. The first time I ever heard about IFCO was when I was standing about 30 feet away from Fidel Castro's museum, filming a documentary in 2003. Reverend Lucius Walker got up and for about 20 minutes, and it was a life-changing experience for me. I mean, the whole my experience in Cuba life-changing, but as soon as I got back to the States, I made some connections, found out about the Rochester Committee on Latin America. I spent about 12 years actively involved with them until I got an appointment to a faculty position up here in Plattsburgh, New York. And it's so good to be back with you folks. I recognize most of you except for Vic. But the work that you do, and I'm speaking to Gail and Samira, is so inspiring. And I have students up here at the University of New York in Plattsburgh who I know would just love to be involved in this on some level. So I'm going to reach out to you folks from the IFCO website and see if we can set something up for the fall semester and moving forward from there.
Great.
And by the way, everybody, I just went site and made a contribution, and I put the link chat window. You'll scroll up to find it now, but you can multitask. You can listen to this and make a donation at the same time, and I would encourage you all to do that. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. It's the most important work that I've ever been involved with, and I look forward to being involved with it again with folks. And hi, Vic, I miss you, buddy.
Thanks, John. Good to see you again.
Thanks. That's so much. Vic, I don't know if you saw, I was just saying Emily Thomas had her hand raised, but is it Grania? Grania Marcus also has her hand raised.
Yes. Shall we go to Grania?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope I'm not repeating this, but I wrote a question in the chat and then lost my the internet connection for a few minutes, so I might have missed the answer, but I was asking if there was a link to the toolbox for advocacy work about the ending the embargo.
I am so glad she asked that.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was going to talk a bit about.
Okay.
There will be. And one of the things we're going to do, if, as Andy was saying, he didn't get the information about the caravan, which leads me to think he's possibly not on our email list. So if you're here tonight, with your permission, I'm going to put you on our email list, and you'll be getting a weekly Cuba Buzz, but you'll also be getting information about the toolbox and other information that we're developing. We saw that bit from Democracy Now! Where Biden speaking before the right-wing people in Florida, influenced by the right-wing Christian nationalist churches, he says, well, I'm not Obama. And he's not. He's doing wonderful things in many directions, but he needs to hear from us as far as Cuba is concerned, because he's hearing from the other side. So he needs to hear from us. And so this toolbox that we referenced is developing materials, and it's an ongoing process, developing materials to let you use, not only to get your own group, but to reach out in the various communities that you're in. And Andy, we're using stuff from the Presbyterian Cuba Network. So the various denominations, various churches, talk to your priests, talk to your mosques, talk to your rabbis. Let's get the faith leaders in this country to be speaking from a position of faith and letting them know, letting us know that you're doing this. Let Biden know what the real people of the United States want vis-a-vis Cuba. So it's up to us, but the toolbox will there with the tools that you need, and the links for that material will be available. And if you've got stuff that you find useful, send it in to us. We'll add it, we'll share it. It's a collective kind of work. So we're looking forward to getting all these Trump-induced changes changed And let's get to working.
That's great. I just wanted to also point to the fact that Samira put into the chat, she and another one of our colleagues, Angie Langdon, created a petition, worked on to create a petition to Biden that that you all can sign. And again, it's to help push him. So that's something that we can make sure that gets put out as well. There's a request for donating. You can donate, but it doesn't, you don't have to donate to change.org as she put you when prompted, but please share the petition far and wide. And the link is in the chat. So I will resend that so that it goes further down. Yeah. Just resending your links.
I'm back. If I missed anything, I had to break my fast. Sorry.
Ah,
It's Ramadan.
yes. I just was resharing your link to the petition and the information you shared about.
And we'll be having some sign-on letters and other kinds of things as well as his petitions. So there's gonna be a lot of goodies, tools you can use. So start building.
Yeah. Yay. Well, this has been fun. Well, I'm so very happy that we got a chance to do this and look forward to staying in touch as we continue to move through. And it's good to see some familiar faces. Wayne Alt, I haven't seen you in forever. And Maxine and Sarah, and I guess once you start mentioning names, then there's some familiar faces, but it's great. It's great to do this.
Okay, Vic, sign off.